Hey everyone, we're glad you've joined us for another episode, another segment of our Let's Talk series where we talk about the sermon and other things, and we just kind of talk about it more, and we welcome any questions or comments at all. It actually is really fun for us to see who's watching, and if you have any thoughts or ideas or questions. So if you do, go ahead and ask them and let us know who's watching. Just we're curious. We want to know who's all here. So this week, we're actually not talking about necessarily the sermon on Sunday. We're talking about something we talked about yesterday for our home group series.
Right. Yesterday in the home group series, we had a section about how Jesus makes himself the new Sabbath rest for his people. And if you can watch that video later, but as a very brief recap, Sabbath was kind of put into as part of the Ten Commandments. It was a way to remember creation. For 6 days, God worked. At the end of 6 days, he said he rested. And God is omnipotent, literally full of power, has no limit to his strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't like he rested because he was tired. It was more that he rested because it was finished. It was complete. And so that Sabbath day, when everything was perfect, everything was good, everything was right, everything was finished, it becomes a something that he wanted them to remember the Sabbath, but also to think about heaven one day when we're all with God again, and certainly think about that time when the kingdom comes, when the Messiah comes, when the Messiah finally makes everything good again. All the sickness goes away, all the disease goes away, death goes away, all the brokenness of this world goes away. It's coming. And so they were to take a day every week and think about that and reflect on it. And we talked about how Jesus, when he came, claimed a lot of that for himself, said that he was the Lord of the Sabbath, said that he had the rights to do certain things on the Sabbath that other people wouldn't have been allowed to do at the time. He kind of reinvents the whole day, and he kind of re-centers the whole day about himself. And it offended the Pharisees mightily. It offended the religious leaders in a big way. And it was one of the things, according to Mark, which we read last night, that finally led them to want to kill him. And that was kind of a review of last night. But there were a few verses in there that I didn't have time to get to. And we were going to talk about some of that today. And we found in both of our small groups that this whole idea that Jesus comes to bring rest to his people, that part of the calling of Christ is that he comes to bring rest. We found that to be pretty compelling in both of our groups, that it led to a lot of conversation, and it led to a few questions. And maybe even as we get into some of the things we hadn't taught about that yet, you may have some questions you want to ask about that, because I really do think that promise of rest exists for us today, and I think that a lot of Christians don't really tap into that.
Why do you think that it's Sabbath? Because we had groups, and our groups go very well every time, but this time the conversations were different. And even we had a couple people in our group saying, like, man, this was a good, like, I'm getting a lot out of it, right? We usually have a time where we slow down and start, doing prayer requests and stuff like that. And someone was like, I just want to keep going. Like, this is good stuff for all of us. We were all learning a lot. I have an answer as to why, but why do you think people are more animated about things like this?
Well, I mean, certainly we're a busy culture. We're a tired culture. COVID has made that worse. I think a lot of people feel isolated. I read something several years ago that talked about two inventions that kind of have separated Americans was the garage door opener and air conditioning, because you would get home from work, open the garage door, not talk to any of the neighbors, go right in, close the garage door, and you're locked into your air-conditioned biodome for the rest of the night. And that in previous generations, you'd sit on the porch, you'd meet the neighbors, you would talk, and we as a culture, we don't do that as much as we used to. And COVID has made what was already kind of a lonely culture an even more lonely culture. And so I think we're all a little ragged.
So
that's part of it.
What we talked about last night was that there's so much stimulation right now, more than ever, right? Your phone, you can do anything on your phone, watch anything, do anything, buy things, you can do all that. But even the amount of things you can do, if we wanted to, we could go play disc golf, we could go eat. How many places can we go eat in Bedford, right? We can do just so many things. and we do a lot of things. And I shared with you, what we talked about yesterday is that we get so busy because that's the culture. Everyone else is busy. Everyone wants to do things. And if you're not doing things, you're lazy or you're not trying hard enough. And we talked about that. Who said that we have to do these things? There's this like guilt culture of if you're not doing enough or posting as much or whatever. And we talked about how maybe today we're like at this level of doing things and we think we should be up here. And you think there's so many things that I should be doing that I'm not. But what if the question where it took a really cool turn is like, what if God wants us to like do this much? Mm-hmm. He wants us to like rest and not book every night doing something and not serve or, well, that sounds bad, right? Not serve. But even there, I think people get in trouble where they're trying to do everything and be everywhere. And then you're just tired. And then if you have time off, well, you don't even enjoy it because you're exhausted. You can't.
Part of it comes to motive. I mean, it's always good to serve. Right. It's always nice to be nice. But when your motive to serve is so that people will like you more, or so that you can prove yourself, or so that you can validate why you're here or why people should value you, it's the motive. It's not wrong to want to go do fun things with your family. It is wrong to want to do fun things with your family so you can post it on social media so everyone will think you have the perfect family. Because suddenly it's just a little warped then. The initial impulse is a good one. It just can get, it goes from me selflessly giving to other people to me not so selflessly bragging on myself and how valuable that I am.
Right. I'm laughing because I can see the comments. And so Marie says hi. Marie, we're glad that you're watching. My friend Johnny, who's he's from California, but he's in Arizona right now. Arizona, I think. He said, this ain't a Thanksgiving plate, it's a 6-course meal. Huh. Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate it. We go way back.
Oh, good.
Back when we started doing coffee in our youth room back in California. History. Anyways, I'm glad you're watching. Sorry. Carry on. That was a funny comment. I saw it. No. I had to mention it. You know?
No, you're fine. One thing I would have talked about last night, I just didn't have time. We tried to do it all in about 25 minutes, the study part, and then have some conversation afterward. It says in Luke 4 that when Jesus first returned to Galilee, and this is after he's been baptized, it's after he's went through the desert temptation, he's going to start his ministry in Galilee. It says in Luke 4 verse 16, he went to Nazareth, his hometown, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went to the synagogue as was his custom. So Jesus customarily was in synagogue on Sunday. He would spend the Sabbath day, or not on Sunday, on Saturday for them, the Sabbath day. Sabbath is from a Hebrew word Shabbat, which means rest. So he would be on the rest day with his people in synagogue, learning about God, thinking about God. And they handed him the scroll to read that day, and he found the place in Isaiah where it says, and I'm going to read it, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me. He's anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Now that prophecy in Isaiah was about Messiah, that one day the Messiah would come and he would make everything right. He would institute Shabbat for real, and it wouldn't just be one day a week, it'd be every day. And again, rest, not so much rest from fatigue, because God didn't rest from fatigue, but enjoying the completeness of it. It's finished, it's all done. And so he reads that, he rolls up the scroll and hands it back to the attendant. He sits down and he says, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." In other words, Jesus says, today starts the real Shabbat. Today starts the rest that was always promised. And again, it's not vacation. Some of you have went on vacation, and you know that even vacation's not always restful. I mean, that's the joke, right? Yeah. I need a vacation from my vacation after I get back. But it's resting in God's completeness. It's resting in what He's already done. It's resting in the idea that you don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to earn God's affection. You don't have to validate why you're here. You know why you're here. You know your purpose. You're content. God has a plan, and you're part of it.
Now, what I do want to talk about, if we're ready for a segue, is there's still a value and benefit to an actual Sabbath resting day, right?
I think so.
Like, I've been reading a few books and podcasts on the thought of how beneficial it is for our body to rest. And it's no surprise, right? Obviously, we need to rest, but almost to where and I can't even, I wish I knew what the article, there were articles and things that I read and heard about how, like, we would just be more efficient if we actually rested. A lot of people may think that Sabbath is, if you have Sabbath, if you practice that, you work really, really hard for 6 days so that you can just rest the seventh. But that seventh day is just going to be miserable. You're just going to be laying down. You're going to oversleep. You're not going to do anything because you're so tired. And you're not even going to be rested enough for the beginning of the next week. So surely it can't be like that. But Sabbath has to be during the week, acknowledging that we don't work for approval or for God's affection, like you were saying. We have Sabbath to enjoy what God has done, to just enjoy life. This guy, I mentioned this guy's Sabbath routine that I read in a book, and I'm not about it personally. But here's what he did. Friday after work, they would clean their house completely, do all the chores, and then they would have dinner, put all their phones in a box and put it in the other room, and they would have dinner together, and they'd make a really nice dessert, and they'd enjoy it. They'd like feast. It'd be a really great meal. The next day, he would sleep in. He'd wake up and make a coffee, and he said he'd just sit by the window and just watch and drink his coffee, and then he'd read for another hour, and then he'd do. And I'm just thinking, like, that sounds cool and all, but I can't do that. The whole just sleeping in, being slow, looking out the window. But the point is that it's what is restful to him is different than what's restful to me. What's restful to me is probably mowing, right? That's, we did talk about that last time. It's mowing, and maybe it's going on a hike with friends and making coffee. Like, that's restful to me. But during the whole time, I'm resting physically, but I'm also just enjoying the work I've done. What's the point of working 6 days a week if you're just going to be dead the seventh day? You can't even enjoy what you've done.
No, and I think that's true. And first of all, physically, I think our bodies were not designed to run 100% all the time. I read a book by a psychologist named Archibald Hart several years ago, where he talked about our bodies were designed for horse and buggy, and now we're living in the technological age. And so you used to have built into your day a lot of time just to think. I mean, the process of walking from here to there, the process of the slow work to build something, to create something. And we don't have slow work at all. I mean, even when we're waiting now, we have our phones to keep the mind racing all the time. And he believed, Archibald Hart, that's what led to a lot of the social anxieties we have today, a lot of the depression, and a lot of the stress-related kind of illnesses we have. Our bodies just weren't designed, our minds weren't designed to run as hard as we make them run all the time. I think there's probably some truth to that. And there's probably some value as a Christian in just on purpose unwinding occasionally. You know, even what you said, the idea of everybody putting their phone in the box for a couple hours, I don't think that's a bad idea for most families.
Right.
I think a lot of families could probably benefit from that. But I think the notion of Sabbath was always bigger. It was included the physical rest, but it was always bigger than that. It was a picture, and it's different than the other 10 commandments in that regard. I mean there's certainly the command to rest, but it's messianic. And the commandments, a lot of the commandments of the 10 commandments, they got into your head. Jesus redefines, like the commandment on adultery says, if you even look at people lustfully, you're already crossing that line. That a lot of the commandments weren't so much about what you did with your hands, though that certainly was a big part of it, but how you thought. Right. And the Sabbath thing, that's included in there. I mean, it's certainly about your thing. One other thing too, as a guy, I've been talking about it as a grandpa. I'm a grandpa now, and that my whole attitude is different as a grandpa compared to what it was as a dad. As a dad, I was still so stressed about making my place at the church that I worked at, making my place amongst my peers. You know, I wanted to succeed. I want people to see that I had succeeded, that I had a growing thing, that I was doing great things, that I was earning a lot. You know, we're trying to build a marriage, we're trying to pay off a mortgage. I mean, there's all this pressure to be somebody. And as a grandpa, I just don't feel as much of that. I'm just in a different stage of life. That doesn't mean I don't want to prove myself all the time. That particular impulse and the envies and the jealousies and all the stuff that comes with that can creep in at anybody at any time. But hopefully as I've gotten older, I'm starting to see how so much of this world pushes you just just to crush yourself to get ahead. Everything's about keeping score. Everything's about being further in front. And I think Jesus had a better plan.
Well, yeah, and even on that, you get to the point, and for what?
Right.
Like you kill yourself to get ahead, to do more, but for what? Maybe to get money, to do things, to be. It's the whole Dave Ramsey thing. It's that you spend money on things you don't need to impress people you don't. What is it? You don't like, or that don't like. Whatever
Right.
it is. It's we're pursuing something, and we really have enough time to slow down and ask, why am I even doing this? You realize, maybe I don't have to be doing all this. Maybe I shouldn't be trying to impress people or work hard for that thing. I don't even need that thing. And then you start evaluating your life and your decisions, and you realize, I could be living in a much slower pace of life, and I'd probably be happier than if I worked hard and had those things that I think were going to make me happy. Maybe we're just chasing something that's not true. Again, it's the thing that I said earlier, how maybe we're like right here and we keep striving to go higher, but maybe God's like, man, I want you like down here.
Right. And it's better to focus on the most important things and do less than it is to focus on everything and just we call it running.
I had a friend last night at small group that said, I can see how that affects you guys. He's like, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that way. If I don't want to do something, I don't do it. If I don't. Right. And he's like, should I feel bad that I'm not? And I was like, no, because you know what? If I text him, he's always available to do something.
Right.
If I need help, he's always ready. Hey, we're going to go do this. Yeah, I have time. So it's actually kind of freeing to not live such a crazy paced life, because then you actually have time to help people or to do things.
But I think it's a better life.
Yeah.
I really do think it's a better life. Again, there are certainly seasons where you have to put your nose to the grindstone and just really grind it out. There are seasons where there is no time and you're chasing both ends and it's just hard. And I know that. And if you're in that season, don't add guilt to everything else that you're going through. I mean, sometimes it's just like that.
Right.
The 2 or 3 young kids at home and a job you're just starting and maybe mom and dad are getting older and you got to take care of that. And there's just 1,000 different things. And hey, it's life. Right, but at the same time, I think we can find rest and comfort in Christ when we lean into Him to know that we don't have to impress Him, that He's already paid for us, that He's already opened the door,
right,
and that when we come to Him heavy and burdened and weary, we can lay our burden down with Him and find rest. And I think that promise is real, and I think it's powerful. One other verse I would have read last night, and this is from Paul. It's in Colossians chapter 2. He says, "Don't let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or a religious festival, new moon celebration, or a Sabbath day." He says, "Don't let them judge you by a Sabbath day and by your observance of a Sabbath day, whatever it is." He says, "These things are a shadow of things to come. The reality is found in Christ." And so even that picture that you painted where I could just sit on my hammock all day and just rest and feel at peace and feel contentment and know the sun's shining on me and everything's right in the world, it's just a shadow. I mean, even that perfect day, whatever that looks like to you, that's a shadow of the reality that any one of us can find in Christ and be able to find all the time.
Right.
Even when it's a zoo, and life way too often is a zoo.
Well, that's a good point. Because maybe what if even right now on the video trying to teach something, I'm getting to the point of like, I want to enjoy my Sabbath day, but then what if it's like, what if you could just enjoy every day?
Right.
To some of us, that could be such a foreign concept because we're just always going.
Right.
That the thought of you can enjoy what you do every day is just no way. It's like you feel like you have to plan a special trip or vacation to enjoy something. What if you don't have to wait weeks or months to actually rest and enjoy what you're doing? My friend Michael, you saw that comment. He said, well, but I want all the things.
Sure.
It's like, sure, but even it's to what Jeff was saying. It's no, sure. It's not bad to work hard for. I remember, I think to buy the drone that I bought, I had to save, right? I had to work and I make things happen, and I got that drone. It's fine to work hard for the things you need, but you don't work. Like it's just a toy. It's just something I want. I'm gonna work for it. The problem is where we feel like that in every area for we have to work. I need to get that thing. I need that type of car, that type of this. That's when it gets hard. That's when you're in a dangerous territory of you feel like you always have to be doing something. But I really like that thought of like, what if every day you got to enjoy it. You got to wake up and feel refreshed and rest.
I think it's a promise.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's now, and all this stuff. You said something about a guilt culture, and I do think America can be a guilt culture. Uh, some people could be hearing this and think, "Oh, crap! One more thing to feel bad about that I don't have," and that really isn't the agenda here. And even if you're living this perfectly, there's bad days. I mean, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, it said he sweat like drops of blood on the ground. You're going to have bad days. I mean, that's part of this world. In this world, Jesus says, you're going to have trouble. There's no getting away from trouble. It's one of those things that we all have to do. But in the same verse, in this world, you'll have trouble, but take heart, he says, I've overcome the world. And there's a sunrise coming. Even in the very worst moments, there's a sunrise coming. And this is not the end. And those good days, those days when everything seems perfect, it's just a taste of the reality we're going to, I think, one day really completely, permanently enjoy in heaven, tied to Him. The comment about all the things, I think we try to, and I know that's a joke, so I'm not making fun of that at all. But we try to, we think that the things are going to make us happy, and they will. They will short term. The problem is the thing is just a thing, and it's not changing, and you're constantly changing. Every day you're changing. And so that thing, no matter how precious or powerful it is, it just can't satisfy long term because it's just a thing, and it's not evolving, and you're constantly evolving. You're going to find something a little more powerful than that.
Well, there's a few comments that added on that it says, I feel like in this time of the pandemic, we're forced to work from home and go, even when you're not working. You're like, even your home that used to be, you said that dome where you can just go home and, everything's over. Now people are pressured. Now, during the pandemic, just you go home and you keep working, everything's online. So now it's different. Now you just can't enjoy even being home. And I feel that, and I know it's weird, but I'm that type of person that if I think it's hard for me to rest when I know that there's things to be done, and I know that smarter people will be like, well, you just need to relax, you need to learn to put things aside, you need to learn that not everything's a priority. Like, I understand all that, but still, it's hard to sit down and to not see all around you that has to get done, or just because of the media, the work, our brain's always going, and I totally understand that. Even me being home, we joked about my in-laws coming and all the stuff I had to do at home. Well, now I'm home and all I see are broken things. That carpet transition, that doorknob, that window, like everything. So now I'm home, I can't even rest because I'm making lists in my head to go to Lowe's and buy all, so where does that end? What do you think is the solution to even just feeling like you can't rest? The anxiety almost of doing that.
Well, there's not like an easy answer, right? But the thing I thought of when you were talking about it is in a race, you just got to set a pace that you can sustain. A couple of years ago, I got talked into running a 5K, and I don't really ever run unless there's a bear behind me or something like that. But I got talked into it, and it was for a good cause, and I intended just to show up and kind of hang out and visit, and I ended up had to run. And so when we take off, everybody takes off, and I'm right in the mob of people taking off, and I'm with them on their pace, but they're all runners. They all had runner's gear on. I think I was wearing jeans. They all had runner's gear on. They all looked like runners. They all had a body like a runner would have, and I had the body that I have. But I kept their pace for about a half mile, about 3/4 of a mile, and then I just couldn't do it any longer. I mean, I finally had to fall off, and I had to actually walk a little to kind of get my bearings again. I would have been better off to pick a pace that I could maintain and then maintain that pace all the way through. And that's partly coming to accept your limitations. And I know that's hard, but it's kind of the truth for everything. I mean, you've got to accept. We all like to pretend like we can do everything, but you can't do everything right now.
Right.
And so you just have to set your pace.
Well, there's two comments, so I'm going to skip one first. Jenny wrote back again and said, I remember growing up, my grandmother didn't allow cleaning, laundry, yard work on Sunday. Now it seems the day to catch up, and it's true, right? The day that was once set aside, even by our tradition of like, well, it's just the way it is. We need to set Sunday aside. Now it does seem like a catch-up day. Why? Because our lives are so full of things that the one day that's still for now culturally accepted to take off work and not do things, well, that's the only time you have off in the week. So naturally, we're inclined to work on those days, right? And then there's a comment right before that says, "Do you think scripturally that we need to honor the Sabbath?" So it's a Saturday on Saturday. I don't know if that was a typo.
Right.
The fourth commandment. God knew we needed a day to cease everything and just rest. That's why He made the commandment, right? So what do you think on that?
Well,
The question being, He said, to take the Sabbath, and now we don't.
let me answer the first question first, the first comment first, and then the second. I think it has always been hard, always, for people to take that day off and not do anything. I mean, right after they instituted the command, they caught a guy picking up wood the very next day, and it's a whole story. I mean, it's just always been hard to put off till tomorrow all the stuff you want to do today, whatever all that stuff you want to do today is. And so I think there is some value, this answers both questions, to taking some time just to rest. That's kind of what you were saying earlier with the physical thing, but not just to rest. Jesus went to the synagogue. It was his custom. I mean, it's what he did. I mean, he got together with the people of God. He tried to focus in on those things. One of the things that COVID has taken away from so many of us is that ability just to get together with other godly people who are trying to do the same things. And you miss that encouragement. And if because you get up early on Sunday and go to church and spend time with that, you don't have time to clean up the house or those things, then have a dirty house. I just think your soul's more important. Now, on the second question, which kind of, again, feeds into that same idea, right? I mean, does the fourth commandment still have the same weight that it did then? I think it does. However, Jesus redefines it. It's really the only command that he redefines, and most of the apostles, well, all the apostles, all the guys who followed Jesus kind of understood. Remember, he dies on a Friday, the day before Shabbat. The next day, Saturday, is the Shabbat, is the Sabbath. And the day after that, he comes out of the grave, and the early church saw that as the beginning of the new age, when the Sabbath rest was there for anybody who wanted to tie into God. And so the early church made Sunday the day that they all got to. It was the first day of the week. The early church kind of reinvented that. I think they were right to do so. And I wouldn't... Paul's verse here in Colossians, I won't judge whoever made the comment. I won't judge you on what you think either, and I trust you won't judge me. I mean, it's got to be your own conscience, but I don't think we're any longer obligated to obey just the Saturday no work observance. I think it can be Sunday now, and I think you've got a little more freedom in how you observe it than we used to. As a minister, Sunday often is a work day for me. My Sabbath a lot of times is Monday, and I to take that day of rest is kind of it's still a good thing, and I recommend that. I don't think it's commanded. If I had to work on Monday, I think I could, but I usually don't. My custom is not to do that, to take that day off.
So to kind of summarize all that, then, because Jesus did things on Saturday, on the Sabbath, it shows that in Matthew, he says how he didn't come to destroy the law. He didn't come to say no more Sabbath. He fulfills the law. So with what you were saying in the beginning of this video was the thought of he accomplished what the law set out to do in the very beginning. And because of that, are we saying that Sabbath is something that we still have to do, or it's just a beneficial thing? And honestly, that's the age-old question, I think, when it comes to Sabbath, because there are people who will die on the line of you have to do Sabbath on Saturday or you're in sin. And there's the people that are saying you don't have to do Sabbath at all. It's just an old thing. And honestly, I'm more in the middle of, I think we should have time in the week. I think we need to stop and rest and have a day for the Lord to enjoy all that. But I don't have a Saturday either. It's not a Saturday for me.
We're kind of getting off here, and we could go a lot longer on this thing, and I don't know, Gabe's my timekeeper on all this stuff, so you straighten me up if we get too far off. But the when you look at what the Jews celebrated as kind of their religious markers, a lot of their religious markers were the food laws, circumcision, and Sabbath. Sabbath and the food laws are both things they grumbled at Jesus about. They're both things that the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the religious leaders took issue with Jesus and how he was reinterpreting them. Circumcision, Jesus doesn't really address, but Paul certainly does and talks about it a lot in his letters. I think all three of those things were for a season. They were pictures of something to come later. They were representative of setting yourself apart, of being a different kind of people. They were shadows, using the Colossians language, of a reality that was later found in Christ. Now, I don't think it's wrong today if a person takes Sabbath on Saturday and observes it. I don't think it's wrong to eat kosher pickles, and I don't think it's wrong to be circumcised. I don't think any of those things are wrong. The wrong thing is when you say you have to do this or God won't like you anymore. I think that crosses a line. And I think Jesus and the early church reinvented those things. They saw all those things as shadows of something coming later on, in my opinion. And I don't know if there's more thought on that. Don't mind. Keep commenting, and we can even talk later on email if we need to, or go back and forth if you're interested.
Yeah.
But
I can tell that this one was a interesting one for many people to talk about. Really good comments, really good questions for sure. Yeah, these are good. It's really good when there's like the participation from other people. But regarding time, we are over.
Okay, sorry.
We're 31 minutes. But
so that's like overtime. That's a benefit for you, really, because
it's
you're
just
getting
the second stream. It's overtime.
Right.
No. If any of you do have more questions, even us answering, you think, well, I still have questions, I want to talk about it. We're send us comments. We can call. We want to talk about these things. This whole video is to talk about things, to get you think, and hopefully maybe get you to ask questions. And we're always available to take those questions, even if we can't do it on the stream anymore. But we are going to cut the stream now, and we're grateful for all of you watching and commenting. It's we do this for you, and we're glad that we get to do this. So, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm seeing all the comments. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, see?
Hey, what do you
I
mean?
feel like we need to do a part 2 on this.
We may do a part 2
tomorrow.
We can, sure.
Maybe. All right. These are all good questions, so we don't mean to.
We may take some of these, and we'll come back tomorrow and try to do it a little better.
Sabbath on Saturday. Yeah. Yeah, it's all good stuff. Well, thank you guys, all of you who participated. These are all really great questions, and maybe we'll prepare some more and come back to do another one tomorrow. So that's all we have for this week, or today at least, until we do the next one, and we'll see you next time.